I'm Trigg Ison from Trigg Ison Fine Art in West Hollywood, California. And we're here today speaking with American artist Darren LeGallo. We've just concluded a large solo exhibition called Darren LeGallo, Nothing You Don't Know, here at our gallery, comprised of paintings and drawings. And here we have you. Welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Pleasure. The first question I wanted to ask you, a number of artists have spoken with me about their need to create art, how important it is in their life. Can you talk a little bit about your personal need to be artistic and create your art?
Well, I find when I'm not doing it, I get really weird. It's kind of almost like if you're a cook and you're not cooking and you're getting fast food all the time, sort of affects you that way. And it's funny because I won't think about it. I'll go about doing stuff that, busy work or errands, and I'll realize it's been like a week or two, and I'm like, why am I feeling so strange? Oh, I haven't painted in a while. So it's kind of that thing that just I have to do, or I feel off.
We've talked a little bit about the style that you paint in, that it's kind of somewhere in between expressionism and surrealism.
Right.
Any specific artistic influences or artists that influenced you along the way?
Sure. I mean, I can't really think of one surrealist artist that hasn't influenced me. Yves, I don't know if I'm going to get his name right, Yves Tanguy.
Yes, correct.
I love his stuff. I love, obviously Dali and Magritte. But also, I did a piece of Egon Schiele. He's a huge influence. I like him. But then as I grew up, I liked Bill Plumpton. Those kind of animated things that he does were, I think, quite the influence. And Ralph Steadman.
I can see that in your, maybe more your pen and ink work than even in the painting work.
I love Ralph Steadman. Those are a few,
and yet you were able to produce, for this show, a body of work that's it may have reminiscence of some of these artists, but it's also very uniquely kind of your own, which is one of the things I liked about your work immediately.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because so much of surrealism deals with the conscious and the subconscious mind, do you find that when you've completed a great painting, that it's able to almost act as a mirror and reflection, that you're able to maybe even learn things about yourself that didn't come into the forefront until you put it down onto a dimensional image as a painting or a drawing?
Yeah, I think sometimes I think it varies with paintings. I think sometimes a painting, you get, I guess what I learned a lot too is a painting gets to a certain place where you get to this point where it challenges you to push through. And I feel like I think that speaks true to a lot of different art forms, whether it's music or anything. You get to a point where you have to, this isn't quite working, and you just have to stick to it and push through it. And so I think that's the number one thing I learn when I'm working on a piece. And it varies too. There's sometimes I go into it with a clear intention of what it's going to be and what it's going to say and this and that. And then there's other times and I work on multiple pieces at once. So if I'm working on something that's really kind of demanding detail or something that's tight, I have another one that I can just kind of lose my marbles on. And then that ends up turning into something that I might not have thought it would.
I wanted to ask you about that as well. You start out with perhaps like a thematic intention in mind, but where it winds up actually being something completely different than you initially started. Yeah. With a number of the paintings, I want to speak to you about equanimity, but this is a perfect example. One of the things I've always thought of when I look at this painting is, if I was the artist and I had painted this, the restraint you must have used not to touch that face. Let's talk a little bit about this painting, because we actually used equanimity in a number of the promotions for the exhibition. Tell a little bit about the conception of this painting.
Well, the conception of this painting actually happened. I was fortunate enough to sit. I'd met Justin. He'd done a film with Amy, did Trouble with the Curve, and I met him in Atlanta.
Justin Timberlake.
Yeah, and he saw some of my art and wanted to just kind of work together in some form or fashion, in which I was like, oh, that's incredible, okay. And then when they came back to LA, they'd been in the studio for a bit, and he called me. He was like, hey man, you should come in. We've been working on some stuff. And I went in there and I brought my computer, and I just started sketching as him and Timberland were making incredible music. And it was kind of a, I've said this before, it was kind of like a pool of creativity that I got to like jump in and swim around in, which was awesome. And there was one song, Push Your Lover Girl, that they made, and during the conception of that, I did a sketch. I didn't quite know what was going to happen, and then Justin started singing, and I was like, whoa, and I just made a sketch in Photoshop, and there was several pieces that I made during those sessions. This was one of them, though, that I was like, that's going to be a painting. I'm going to turn that into a painting. And from the sketch to this, it grew substantially. I like that you don't know whether. Light is obviously, it's emanating from her face, but it's also, what I like about this is that it could be coming out or it could be pulling you in. And as far as like a face with eye, there were several people when I was working on this. There's only a couple people that came into the studio that actually saw this when I was working on it, but they were like, so what are the eyes gonna look like? And I'm like, there's not gonna be any eyes.
Right.
And that some people just kind of had. Well, the two people, there was one of them that just was kind of like couldn't quite wrap his head around it. But then when he saw it when it was done, he was like, oh, okay, yeah.
There is that kind of mystery involved in a lot of the work, whether it is a face that doesn't exist or multiple faces that you really have to kind of explore. I know when we talked about her suggestion, how funny it is that when you look at that painting in person, or rather when I look at that painting in person, I immediately see the woman's face and all of the fragmentation. And it appears to me that she's wearing a mask, but when you look at it closely, or particularly when you take a photograph of it, it's the profile that comes out in that mask that you really kind of have to look through in order to see it. Her suggestion's much different, for example, than New, which we have over here, and Equanimity, in the respect that both of those paintings have much more vacuous faces that leave the faces to the imagination, where her suggestion, there's multiple faces within the one painting.
Right.
And I see that happening in a number of your paintings, and I find that just terribly interesting. Well, I like paintings you can look at for a really long time, and you just kind of get to continue the journey through them.
Right.
I think that's really kind of very exciting. This painting has gotten so much positive response, people just stand in front of it and lose themselves in her, which is fantastic.
Well, that was, it was pretty awesome because, getting to do that and have the opportunity to just sit in there while they were doing that kind of stuff was such a great gift, and that's why I wanted to ask him to co-host with us, because
which really was marvelous.
Yeah, it was really cool of him, and it just really sparked. It kind of gave me a spark, not that I hadn't been painting before or doing my artwork before, but it just kind of sent me in a direction that I don't think I would have been on had I not had that experience. So I was really grateful, and was he's been really supportive, which has been great.
Well, at the opening, we were fortunate to have everybody here. The enthusiasm that he has for your work, and it pretty much everybody I've presented the work to,
that's nice.
has a very positive, interested. It's interesting.
Right.
You've heard this expression. The most interesting person is an interested person, and when we present work, it's very interesting to see what people's reactions are. And almost across the board, people have found interest, whether it's in a pen and ink drawing of yours, which in such a small space to capture that much detail is very unusual. You're thinking about maybe experimenting into some mixed media work, possibly some sculpture.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, it's been years. It's been, 20-something years. Just about 20 years since I've since I've done a sculpture. Last one I did, I told you about it, was a bronze piece that took me months to sculpt. Well, I was actually sculpting out of wax, and it was a plate, I guess, a ground with 3 or 4 different figures. One pointing at the sky, one afraid of it, one pleading with it. And you couldn't tell whether they were coming in out of the ground or into the ground. And then we did the sprues and everything, and all I have left from that sculpture is a leg and a torso.
Wow.
So that I was crushed because of the amount of work that had gone into that. So I just stepped away from doing it for a long time. But actually coming in here, between you and my buddy Dusty, I've been, kind of inspired to do some more sculpture. So it would be interesting to see what happens with that. I think I'll have a lot of fun with it because it's been so long.
The sculpture you're describing, like a lot of the paintings, one of the things also about some of the series you've done, particularly with Welcome to the Show, Welcome to the End, they question the dimension between the viewer and the painting. You have images that seem to go on endlessly into the painting, but you've got subjects either like Welcome to the End, when you have the dog's legs sticking out, and the question, is he stepping in to the dimension or is he stepping out? Same with the cardinal on the finger of the man, which I just find so interesting. I like questioning, posing questions to people. What is it you see? Are you seeing something entering? Are you seeing something exiting? And in that, it's kind of entering and exiting consciousness and levels of consciousness, and that's where the surrealist influence, I think, really kind of shines with your work.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that's great.
It's funny because I lose, you are in front of them for so long, and you tend to lose perspective. You only know that, like, her suggestion beats you up when you're doing it, and and other ones kind of flowed a little bit more smoothly. But man, it's always interesting to hear what other people get out of it, because being in front of it for as long as I am, I kind of tend to lose a little bit of perspective.
I really enjoyed when Dave and I visited the studio for the first time, and we were able to go through some paintings that weren't fully completed yet.
Right.
And after discussing them and pulling them and telling you which ones I really loved, and that some of them you actually took in a totally different direction and completed them, and they just came out spectacular. I'm thinking maybe mostly of The Gift. At this point, it was almost a different painting when I first saw it, and the details that you brought to life, these biomorphic, surreal forms. You could almost reach in and pull one out of the painting, which I love. And also, those paintings have a lot of hidden imagery and hidden faces in them. So I've enjoyed this collaboration very much. And we move on into the future. So we'll see what's next. Any ideas? You have ideas floating around for new work, new paintings coming?
Definitely.
We're ready to roll. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you, my friend. Again, Darren LeGallo's paintings will continue to be represented by the gallery. And we're Trigg Ison Fine Art, and we're 9009 Beverly Boulevard in West Hollywood. You can see the entire exhibition on our website, which is www.triggison.com. And this has been the art of Darren LeGallo.